human slavery in our region, please welcome Grace Forrest.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Grace Forrest, and I am a founder and director of the WalkFree Foundation, an international human rights group focused on the eradication of modern slavery in all its forms in our lifetime. Modern slavery is an umbrella term that describes a number of extremely exploitative practices, including forced marriage, forced labour, debt bondage, domestic servitude, human trafficking, organ trafficking, and state-imposed forced labour. While these vary massively, they all have one thing in common. They involve one person having their freedom systematically removed by another for personal or financial gain. Slavery exists today on a totally unprecedented scale. There are more slaves in the world today than any other time in human history. Every single country in the world has people living in slavery, and the world's most powerful nations are importing hundreds of billions of dollars of high-risk products of slavery every year. In Australia, we have had cases of forced labour, forced marriage, debt bondage, and human trafficking. Just last year, there was a case in an embassy only a kilometre from where our Prime Minister lives. So that's the problem, but how does it continue to exist? Slavery is driven by some of the biggest challenges facing us today: environmental degradation, conflict, climate change, distressed migration, gender and cultural discrimination, repressive regimes such as North Korea, and finally, exploitative and unethical business practices. The response to this complex multidimensional problem therefore demands strategic collective action in order to make positive and lasting change. That is why at WalkFree, we work to address slavery where it occurs, as well as its key drivers, with partners from civil society, business, government, faiths, academic institutions, and to strategically tackle slavery from a multitude of angles. Through our work, we have guided governments on the implementation of legislation to expose and eradicate slavery. We have garnered the support of the world's religious leaders, including the Pope, to ensure in no corner of any faith can slavery be justified. We work on the front line through our partner, the Freedom Fund, to sustainably liberate people and empower the voices of survivors. And we work with major global businesses, from Walmart to Adidas to Wesfarmers, to examine the ethics of the activity deep in their supply chains and introduce concrete measures to protect people and the environment. But if we want to end slavery in our lifetime, we can't do that without a global movement for change. And I believe this movement starts with statistics and stories. Statistics are an incredibly powerful tool in the pursuit to end modern slavery. By measuring the problem, we can better understand where and how it exists and the steps we need to take to resolve it. WalkFree is responsible for crunching and publishing the leading measurement on slavery globally. In partnership with 2 UN agencies, we have developed an agreed global number, and on our own, we publish country-by-country estimates. We use statistics to encourage political, business, faith, and civil society leaders to act, but alone, these statistics aren't enough. Along with these statistics, we must also share the sharp, gritty reality of this problem in words and images that best reflect the people at the very heart of it, the victims and survivors of modern slavery. Stories are an important tool in social change because they have the power to shape the way people interact with the world around them. Stories can make us hope, think, and feel compassion. Stories can make us act. When we become emotionally involved in a person's experience, it can remind us of the human impact of an issue and motivate us to continue to look and find out what we can do as individuals. After discovering a sinister child trafficking ring in Nepal, the personal stories I encountered led me to co-found WalkFree at 18. I am now 25. As a young 21st century abolitionist, I continue to travel the world, and I am fortunate to have heard so many of these stories firsthand. My work has taken me to refugee camps in the Middle East, enslaved communities in India, and exploitative fishing vessels in Thailand, to just name a few. I would now like to share some of these stories with you. On any given day in 2016, 40.3 million people were living in modern slavery. In the past 5 years, 90 million people have experienced some form of modern slavery, for periods of time ranging from a few days to the whole 5 years. Some people live in slavery for a lifetime. Here is one such story. This photo was taken in Varanasi, northern India. It is in a community previously held in intergenerational debt bondage. For generations, these people have been born into slavery, owned by a landlord. This is partly due to the caste system, and this is partly due to the caste of this particular village, which, while legally outlawed in India, is still used in some parts of the country to systematically oppress certain people. This beautiful group of women here are Musa people, which translates to rat eater. When we first approach villages such as this, it can take us up to 4 months to convince them that they are people, human beings with basic human rights under the Constitution of India. Through the exceptional work of the Freedom Fund, the communities are empowered to file a legal case against their slaveholder. When this is successful, it can break enslavement for 4 living generations previously owned by a landlord. This is them now living as a free village. Of the 40.3 million people in slavery, 25 million people are in forced labour. Forced labour refers to situations in which people are forced to work through the use of violence or intimidation, or by more subtle means such as manipulative debt or the retention of identity papers, preventing people from moving. Pay is always withheld as a means of control and is rarely ever paid out. Hands tell a story. And in 2017, in December, I spent some time in the docks of Bangkok interviewing fishermen who had returned from sea. In Australia, we import 70% of our seafood from Thailand, and I wanted to shine a light on the conditions that this seafood is so often caught in. I did not meet or interview a single fisherman who hadn't experienced some form of violence or exploitation at sea. Moreover, every single fisherman I talked to had witnessed at least one murder at sea, mostly when someone had tried to question the captain or asked to return to shore. While these men initially signed up for a 3-month contract, due to transshipping where men are traded between boats out at sea, they are sometimes held for years at a time, with their pay withheld, leaving them lucky to walk away with their lives, if anything at all. One company told me they were tackling these deep issues of exploitation through tracing fingertips of the workers to better identify them. However, fishermen rarely have fingertips due to the extensive corrosion of rope and salt water at sea. Honestly, the fishermen could not stop laughing when I asked them about it. Now, this doesn't necessarily highlight the company doing something sinister, but most likely the abrasive disconnect between boardrooms and reality. There are some companies doing the right thing. WalkFree is the secretariat of the Bali Process Government and Business Forum, which brings together government and business leaders in the Asia-Pacific region to work on solutions on tackling slavery in supply chains. The companies I previously mentioned are involved, as are Thai Union, the seafood exporter. But much more has to be done, and it is the entire system which needs an overhaul, not just one company trying to reach up and do the right thing. 15.4 million people are living in forced marriage. The vast majority are women and girls. This is Sarah. We met in a Syrian refugee camp in 2016 in Lebanon. I remember at the time doing a double take when we caught each other's eye, as we could easily be sisters looking back. Distress, migration and conflict make people exceedingly vulnerable to all forms of slavery. Often, if adults are unable to acquire work visas, children are the only remaining option and are sent out to find work. Similarly, mothers often feel marrying their girls off young will protect them from a worse fate when they are living in a camp without any physical security of walls and doors. As Sarah's mother and many other mothers around the camp explained to me, while they knew there were risks involved with their daughters being married before they were old enough, they felt it was one of their only options to secure their daughter's safety against other predators. Imagine being a mother faced with such a set of options. Girls married against their will or as children are 4 times more likely to experience violence and exploitation within that marriage. Rarely are they ever able to leave. Lastly, women and girls are disproportionately affected by nearly every form of slavery. They represent 71% of the total number of people in slavery, 58% of those in forced labour, 86% of those in forced marriage, and 99% of those in commercial sexual exploitation or human trafficking. I took this photograph in Amman, Jordan. My subject, Mary, could not have her face photographed as she was in the middle of a court case against her employer. She, like tens of thousands of other women before her, had come to the Middle East in search of a job as a domestic worker. However, due to the kafala system, a legal structure which strips migrant workers of their legal documents, right to movement, and other basic human rights, a huge proportion of them experience slavery and violence, some for several months or even years at a time. Mary said, "When my mother broke her back last year, I decided to go to the Middle East for 6 months to earn enough money to pay for her medical bills. It was always my fear that I would be exploited or raped by an employer, but many girls told me this was just the way it is when you go to be a maid. So I prayed I would get a nice family. I prayed. When I arrived, they took my passport straight away and told me I would have to stay then longer than my contract had said. When I tried to refuse, they beat me. And when I went to the recruiter who had sent me to my employer, he just turned around and sent me back, so they beat me again. After that, I realised I was alone, and it was best that I just stay silent." While Mary was lucky enough to escape into the arms of a group who was able to help her, her story is one of hundreds of thousands across the Middle East and in Asia. These stories come from spending time with people who have fallen victim to modern slavery, have survived it, or are at a high risk of experiencing it. I listen to their experiences, ask them questions, share meals with them, and play with their children. I become a part of their world for one small moment, and with their permission, I document their experiences and take their photographs. I believe that when someone is equipped with an understanding of the enormous scale of modern slavery, as well as the truly devastating personal impact it has, then they have the information and the impetus necessary to grasp this issue with both hands and try and make a real difference. And that's what I ask of you. The Asia Pacific is the world's largest region, accounting for 56% of the global population. The region is also responsible for modern slavery on a shocking scale. WalkFree estimates 25 million men, women and children are living in modern slavery in our region, or 62% of our overall global estimate. We have the highest number of victims across all forms of slavery. The stories you heard today are from our region or not far from it. Each of us has the power to make the world a better place. Every time we make a consumer choice, vote for a political party, or endorse a brand on social media, we have an opportunity to have a positive or negative impact on the world. Even right now, in this beautiful conference room, we are here connected to slavery, maybe even through the clothes on your back or the phone in your pocket. But that should not dishearten you. That connection to slavery gives you power to break it. People power is the new superpower. Ask who made my clothes, question the origins of the coffee you buy, and talk to your favourite brands about what they are doing about this. It is not enough to say nothing. If you say nothing, you are part of the problem. This is not a problem that happens over there. There is no over there in a globalised world. It is our problem, and it is our responsibility to say enough. Because when we care, when we shape our purchases around these questions, businesses start to listen and they start to act. If there are over 40 million people living in the man-made machine of slavery today, then we need at least 40 million people to rise up, stand up, and shout out that we will not tolerate it, that we want to be the last generation living with slavery, that we will not tolerate modern slavery in the products that we buy, the food we eat, or the world that we live in. Understand the statistics, listen to people's stories, and make an informed choice. Thank you.